Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 266, Extraversion Bias and Mental Health. Have you ever felt that the way you move through life was designed for an altogether different world? Like this world wasn't built for the way you naturally live your life or the way you feel. It's like consistently being out of sync, out of place, and being faced with fitting into shapes that just aren't right for you. I know I have, and for many years, in fact. It presented me with something of a conundrum. Conform, become a sheep and toe the line, or continue marching to my own drum? What to do? Either way, it can take a serious toll on our mental well-being, because being told you're out of sync or feeling the pressure to bend yourself so out of shape to fit in with a prescribed way of being is simply being subjected to bias. And as you know, my focus is particularly on the bias towards the extrovert ideal. Now, I'd love to say that I solved my conundrum quickly and effortlessly, but that wouldn't be true. And one of the things you can rely on me for is to tell you how it really is. So in this episode, I'll share something of the convoluted path this conundrum led me down, in the hope that it will inspire you to recognise the path you may be on so you can take appropriate action. I knew that, especially in early adulthood, those years that nowadays I refer to as my insecure period, I knew I didn't like the feeling of being out of step with everyone else. I was left feeling that I was the odd one out, wrong and not enough. Ironically, I consider being the odd one out and out of step as a strength these days. Quite the pivot, isn't it? As much as I despise how cliched that word has become. Anyway, as I look around and observe younger people today, I can see that many are also struggling. The toxic bro culture, where success and confidence equate to being obnoxiously outspoken and dominant, both physically and emotionally, is only adding to the struggle of our disaffected youth. Worse still, it's surfacing such role models in business, including the C-suite. Now, I was brought up to respect my elders, but I could never respect this type of misogyny, narcissism, or psychopathy. The reality is, until we each have developed a strong sense of self, a sound moral compass, and the associated intentional values, we can feel like the odd ones out and maybe even isolated. The certainty being presented by powerful characters affects people who are trying to fit in, as they find the allure of these self-confident individuals irresistible. When we feel confused and disconnected from who we really are, aligning ourselves with a powerful entity can feel like a panacea, but it's really not. It's an example of conformity bias, which plays a part in the extraversion bias we all experience. And of course, before we choose to conform, thinking it's our only option, we will probably have conducted some form of comparison in which we found ourselves lacking. This is often encouraged by the toxic bro leaders so evident today, or by other ill-informed but well-meaning individuals in our lives. The thing is, when we bend ourselves out of shape to fit in with what seems like the cultural norm, the acceptable, it's not unusual to feel a deep sense of unease, or to put it another way, dis-ease. And that only disconnects us further from who we are. And think about that for a moment, because this sense of dis-ease is often the root of disease,
There's no coincidence there. And when we feel that dis-ease, our mental health bears the brunt initially as we wrestle with uncomfortable feelings and a felt sense of wrongdoing. And when we notice that, in that moment, we have choice, although it may not always feel that way. That moment is our signal to really think about what we are doing, because in most cases, no one is forcing us. We have chosen to follow a specific path, so our discomfort is of our own making. Harsh, but true. And I'm really clear on this. I know that it can feel like we don't have a choice, so I never underestimate the strength of that dilemma. The good news is that we are now in a position to make more informed choices in some ways. We have more positive role models if we choose to look. There is more grounded research, better information, and actionable resources that enable us to be the best version of ourselves. So we can be reassured that introversion is the norm for us, and who the heck wants to be normal anyway? I know I don't. I often use the well-known quote of a former First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." She added, "The choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility." Both of these are so true, and it takes us to have a certain strength of character to accept that truth. And now we have the resources, it's also easier to find like-minded souls who share our personality type. There are communities we can join where we're supported rather than corralled. So to me, it feels like it's time to break free from the constraints that were trapping us. But how do we break out of this cycle? The main thing, and I think this is definitely easier said than done, is to choose to knock the comparisonitis on the head. I know it's easier said than done because it still inflames me on occasions. I've chosen that phrase deliberately, as itis literally means inflammation. Why oh why am I inviting in unwelcome inflammation into my system, knowing it will negatively impact my mental health? How does it still catch me? Well, so-and-so is apparently doing better than me, or another person is attracting more comments on a social media post. Let's unpack these for a moment. I'm conducting comparison that inflames based on an incomplete picture. How nuts is that? And I'm not an uneducated person. Why do I knowingly invite feelings of inadequacy, which increases anxiety and potentially opens the door to burnout? What I try to do now is catch myself in the moment of comparison and ask myself, how is this serving me? This is such a powerful question, and one always to have ready to pose to ourselves. I have been reminded by some very smart people that no one else's path should determine self-worth or define what fulfillment looks like for me. And a good friend of mine says, comparisonitis is the state of being when you're staring in wonder, and maybe a little envy, at someone's engaging live on social media while discounting your own behind-the-scenes courage and how far you've come in your own story. It is such an unfair, unnecessary and frankly cruel game we play with our heart, mind and soul. And the fact that it's unnecessary cruelty is well worth remembering. It also brings me to the thing we would all benefit from, talking with others with whom we feel psychologically safe to open up. This isn't people who collude with us, judge us, or lead us on their preferred path. If any of those things are happening, there is probably psychological manipulation going on. And that's tough because we can be lulled into a false sense of safety when someone colludes with us or tells us what to do. But in my experience, it is rarely true safety. They have their best interests at heart, not ours. Pause for a second with me, if you will. Take a deep breath, the type of breath that calms the nervous system. Then think of a person or two in your trusted circle with whom you feel safe. You feel accepted and in fact celebrated as who you are. Someone whose presence uplifts you. Someone who holds space and time for you unconditionally. And just as importantly, someone who, when you are around them, you show up entirely as yourself, almost effortlessly. True psychological safety exists when someone like this holds the space for us to emote, to talk about how we're feeling without fear of any kind. Professional therapists, the like of the brilliant Helen Ferguson, a guest on my Dropping Pebbles in the Pond show a while back, is a master at this. But we don't all have access or the funds for therapy. So what then? All the research points to the fact that men are often less comfortable talking about their feelings and the pressures they're facing. Young men in particular are facing a lack of wholesome role models or altruistic mentors in their community, as highlighted by Gareth Southgate in his recent and brilliant Dimbleby lecture. If you've not watched it yet and have men in your life, I suggest you do. We all need to be able to connect meaningfully with another human being, even we introverts. I shared on a training event recently at a Magic Circle law firm about the power of intentionally creating a reciprocal support network. The idea is to build relationships with people you can turn to when you're troubled or wrestling with comparisonitis. And this network is so powerful because you know that you'll be there for them in the same way. You discuss boundaries and what you need and want from each other. And I'll tell you one thing for sure, it sorts the true friends from the self-serving hangers-on. But taking inspiration from Gareth Southgate, how about you become the role models you're searching for? Why don't you start by being the number one best friend to yourself? Reflect and listen to your own needs and then find that connection with another. Hold space for yourself and then share that magic with someone else looking for inspiration. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. We may be introverts, but we're not meant to be isolates who have nothing to do with others. Yes, we need to recharge on our own, but we still need people around us who genuinely care for us. Seek out those who are the quieter ones like you and find out how they are. This may feel scary and even a little risky, but we need more kindness and compassion in this world if we're to look after our mental health. Don't assume that everyone who is on their own always wants to be alone. I'd like my final reminder to be that no one has the right to tell you how you should feel or what you should be doing. We all have mental health, good on some days, bad on others, and sometimes downright shocking. I've noticed that people have got a bit sloppy when talking about it though, and will sometimes say, "It's my mental health." The responsible thing to do is to pay attention and take care of it so we feel good about ourselves whilst not harming others. In summary, hold space for others and for yourself. Seek out those who lift you up and be the one who lifts others up, because those of us who are wholesome guides or mentors are the ones who can help we quieter ones navigate the challenges of our biased society. It's a personal journey for sure, yet true companionship makes the path easier to navigate, meaning the mental health roller coaster becomes more of a merry-go-round. And of course, the direction of travel is always better if it's heading towards flourishing.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.